So good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, May 30th, 2019. The time is 9:03 a.m. We are meeting for our weekly meeting with weekly agenda with community development, and we do have an amended agenda this morning. But before we get to that, let me just point out that Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios are here, present. Pledge of Allegiance. Mary, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any potential conflicts of interest? Hearing none. Do we have, it looks like we have an amended agenda. So is there a motion to add an executive session?
Sure. Pat, how do you want the motion to read?
Actually, the executive session is already on the agenda, so it doesn't, we don't need to amend the agenda to include it.
Oh, okay, so I can get rid of this then?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
great.
posted.
Okay,
Posted like with a minute to spare.
understood.
It was, thank you very much.
Okay then, so if there are no changes, just under the wire. If there are no
Yes.
changes to the agenda, we'll move forward. We have an appeal hearing. This is item 5 on our agenda, and it's case number APP19-0001. It's a request by Benjamin Johnson and the Bend Point Road Association to appeal an administrative decision by the Kootenai County Community Director. And I'll let the planner, Vlad, elaborate. Yes, sir.
Chairman, I'd like to open up on this,
Please.
since it's an appeal of my decision. The way these things work, the staff is authorized to make decisions on my behalf.
Okay,
In this case, Vlad processed a minor subdivision, and we did it in the usual customary way.
okay,
But it is also any affected person's right to appeal that decision.
okay,
So in this case, Mr. Johnson is actually asking for another public hearing with you today. Not to be held today, but it's for you to decide if you will do this like you would for another variance or any other case the planners would typically bring before you. We just list this separately as an appeal so that you know that it's different from a variance or a subdivision or something.
okay.
Yeah, it would be an appeal hearing,
It's an appeal hearing.
and it's, you know, the format is a little bit different than the typical public hearing. But, you know, and those procedures are prescribed in land use and development code. But I think at this point, it would be sufficient to determine whether to either make a decision based on the hearing on the record now and on the hearing examiner's recommendation, or if you wish, to grant an appeal hearing before the board, which I would recommend that you do. But those are your options under the order.
Okay.
Would this take place at a 9 o'clock meeting, or would we do it at our 2 o'clock hearing slot, or 6 o'clock in the evening? What
It's
does
kind of
it-
your call.
To be decided?
Yeah, it's within
Okay.
your discretion
Okay.
to determine what time.
And we
when
can,
what time.
we can certainly decide that later. So Director Callahan, do you agree with council?
Yes, sir, of course.
Okay. And I should point out for my 2 commissioners that customarily, when there is an appeal, we typically do grant the public hearing. So if we're in agreement, is there a motion?
Sure, I move that we grant the request for a public hearing on case number APP19-0001, a request by Benjamin Johnson.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Filios.
Aye. Motion granted. Thank you. So moving on to the item number 6, which is really the second item on our agenda, which is signings. So the first signing is, and this is a continuation from the May 23rd agenda, case number MSP 18-0002, Lake Club Estates, a request by Echo Bay Holdings LLC. The board did hold a public hearing on April 10th, voted 2-1 to deny the request. So do I have a motion to execute the order of decision?
Sure. I move that we execute the order of decision for case number MSP 18-0002, Lake Club Estates.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. Motion carried. Also continued for May 23rd, 2019, case number MSF 19-0003, Lone Mountain Estates, 3rd edition. It was a request by JT Holdings LLC for a final approval. The board did hold deliberations on May 16th and voted to approve the request. So is there a motion to execute the order of decision?
Sure, I move that we execute the order of decision for case number MSF 19-0003, Lone Mountain Estates, 3rd edition.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. Motion carried. So before moving on to executive session, I guess we would be executing the cases. You got it, okay.
Thank you. Sometimes I don't, you know.
I noticed. Okay, this goes back to Catherine. Thank you. Okay then, so moving on to item 7, our executive session. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session?
Sure, I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061F.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
And Chairman Philios.
Aye. Entering into executive session with Civil Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Pat Braden and of course our Director David Callahan. So we're about to exit executive session. Is there a motion?
Sure, I move that we exit executive session.
I second the motion.
Oh.
Sorry,
No, go
with
ahead.
staff to proceed as discussed.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. There was no official second, but that's okay. I think we get the gist. Okay, so the time is now 9:27 a.m. We are exiting executive session. Do we have an item B? The Hutter Creek setback overlay?
Floodplain regulations.
Oh, I'm sorry, item A. So item 8 on our business, moving on. It's item 8A, floodplain regulations. It's an information item. Director Callahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Floodplain regulations have been on our books for many decades. Are you familiar with them at all?
A little bit.
A little bit? Let me give you a quick, least you need to know synopsis. The regs started nationwide in the 70s, in large part because it's fair to say a couple of $1 billion would be blown away every year in floods. Since then, most communities have adopted floodplain regulations of any size, and most meet the minimum federal standards or more, and I'll explain that in a moment. The thing that to me is neat about floodplain regs is it's one of the few ways that local government can have an immediate impact to save lives and save money. No one disputes that there will be floods. It's always a matter of when. And not very many people dispute where. You know, you can generally tell where the flooding is going to occur. We do have some A zones that are unmapped, and that creates a little bit of engineering expense at times, but you can get through these things. Where we are today, the reason I put this in front of you is the chair of our plan commission asked me if he knew, or if I knew, what you thought about the floodplain regs, and I said, well, I should probably tell him about it first.
Please.
So, because we're in for an update.
Okay.
And the reason we're in for an update is, you know, like anything else, our regs have fallen behind the times. The feds have changed things over time, and then the state models after the feds. The one place where there's a real takeaway for this morning for you is our adopted regs today, and as they are proposed, are a little bit more of threshold than the minimum requirement by the feds of the state, because in order to participate in what's called the Community Rating System, or CRS, which is how we lower insurance rates for anyone that gets floodplain insurance, you have to have a little bit higher threshold. So for instance, we have a 3 foot above the base flood elevation as a starting point. You don't have to by federal law, but then you don't get the brownie points for CRS. So the long and short of it is, if we were to plow through here, I won't waste your time, but everywhere you see a strike through or an underline where it's new, is doing one of two things: either mirroring the federal/state approach, or our little increment more in order for us to have our CRS rating. So that's truly it, the least you need to know in a nutshell about our floodplain regs. And we're scheduling with our plan commission for a workshop here soon, and then there'll be a full-blown public hearing that'll be noticed in the usual way. And then we'll have it in front of you as a public hearing in the usual way.
And CRS being what? It's an acronym for?
Community Rating System.
Got it, okay.
And since this is legislative, you can talk with it about anyone, anytime, with staff, maybe with anyone.
Okay.
Has there been any opposition thus far?
There was, that I believe we worked through. It was from the Kootenai Lakeshore Association. They didn't want to be troubled with another permit, because it turns out the feds require us to track everything in the floodplain that gets permitted. So arguably a dock permit, if it was the wrong place, we'd need to check and make sure So what we worked
No,
out was
we went rounds with the FEMA on that.
it was a bit much.
That's,
But we got to work through, and the end result was we're tracking it. Well, we're not going to actually require anybody to pay a fee, but we'll show the feds where we've looked at it, it meets the regulations.
we already do that a review of compliance with floodplain regulations. We just hadn't been calling it a permit. Now we're gonna call it a permit.
And that makes them happy.
And we're not gonna charge them anymore, and, you know, not likely to actually do any more work.
Okay.
And as far as I can recall, that was really the only sticking point.
Right, the flood development permit and the encroachments.
Right. And so I think we're past that. We'll hear at the public hearing if
Yeah.
there's anything
And I
else.
have submitted both the proposed changes and, you know, filled out, they have a checklist for local flood damage prevention regulations that they use to determine compliance. And I sent them one that was filled out and, you know, citing the sections for our land use and development code where each provision was
Which we
at,
passed on to the
along
state
with copies of
administrator.
all those
Right.
provisions.
Yeah.
Are we still waiting for their final?
I sent it to the state floodplain coordinator,
This is
Maureen
last week.
O'Shea. I
Yeah.
haven't actually heard from her yet.
No, neither have I.
And I don't know that, I mean, surely we'll hear before our public hearing.
Well, I would hope so.
But,
Well, yeah, because I wouldn't want to do a lot of work and then come back and say, no, you need these changes,
Right.
because then
right,
our,
I agree.
Yeah.
I'll,
I mean,
I'll
I
start
think-
calling them if we
I
don't
think,
hear
we-
anything.
yeah, I mean, I think we can at least, you know, put it in a workshop, you know,
Right.
but maybe not have the public hearing.
Maybe not schedule a hearing until we know.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So this was an informational session?
yeah,
Yes.
unless you
Okay.
have any more questions or
No? Any questions from?
any concerns? Okay, well, thank you for your time on that.
Okay then, so we'll move on to item B, 8B, consideration of Hutter Corridor setback overlay. We have a potential action item.
This is interesting because I actually came up with this on my own too. And then I see this on the agenda, I'm like, yeah.
Well,
Kind of interesting because I'm kind of wondering where the Hutter Corridor project is at, given the fact that their ITD's going ahead with an interchange on existing US 95 and Highway 53.
well, that's kind of why I have this on the screen and we wanted to get in front of you. Background information. Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, you'll recall, is our liaison with the federal government for
KMPO.
federal pass-through of monies. And I get to sit on an advisory committee called KCAT, Kootenai County Area Transportation Team, with all the highway supers and others. And so I get to see all of this level of detail years before it actually gets on the federal agenda. In this case, it is on the federal agenda, meaning that we're in line for monies. And that's huge because it's real dollars to do this kind of thing. I've forgotten how many tens of millions it is, but it's maybe in the hundreds of millions to make this sort of thing.
I think it's probably close to $1 billion, actually.
Yeah, to do the whole thing,
Yeah.
right,
including right-of-way acquisition and everything else. But it is kind of the last hurrah, frankly, of any sort of major highway we can do in the cities.
right.
And it has huge relief of sticking points for what transportation engineers call level of grade service F, which is just like in high school, if you get an F, it's bad. If you're in transportation planning and it's service F, it's bad.
Okay.
Right.
So this is one of the few ways we have left to put us more back in the A, B, and C category around the county. So it's good land use planning, good highway planning. I think everyone in KMPO and everyone that I've dealt with thinks we ought to do this. The reason I brought it in front of you is one of the things we could do to help reduce cost and get in front of this is put together a setback overlay like we have already done on the Highway 41 area. and I'll show you that in a moment, which we would put into our land use and development code so that when new projects are coming through us, not the city, but through us, they have to at least put the building outside of where the road is planned to be.
Right.
And with the,
That makes sense.
yeah, with the upcoming widening of Highway 41, that, overlay area is gonna.
Can you roll that down a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Is gonna pay off.
Here's where it ties in.
Just want to see, yeah.
Right there, on that side, and then all the way at the top, it's
So
up
is-
here.
So the highway's not gonna be inside the blue, but the blue is just the setback?
No, actually, the blues, I'll show you the legend.
Okay.
It's just their planning corridor. The
Okay.
red, if you can make that
Yeah,
distinction
yeah.
right there, is the
Or the
actual
actual
footprint,
buildings.
if you will, which
Okay.
means everything that needs to be built would be within the red area. And
Oh,
all the,
okay.
and presumably all the acquisition. What this doesn't show is the setback line, but I assume it'd be coterminous or the same as the red.
Right. Because then it kind of merges with,
Yeah, this part of the thing here is scale. I got
Okay.
these shape files, if you will, that's the nomenclature for GIS from the KMPO staff, and then gave it to our GIS staff. They created this for me. And I mostly wanted to get this in front of you, make sure you're okay with it, and then we'll go back and look at the details of zooming in and figure out exactly where the setback lines would be and go from there.
so that's it, the Hutter bypass ends at 53 and 95?
Uh-huh.
Ah,
Right there.
Yeah, that's gonna be a design challenge, quite fun.
well, they're actually starting on the whole Highway 95, Garwood and 53
Right.
stuff. So I just didn't realize that Hutter bypass was gonna be in walking distance from my house.
No, you know,
Now I know. Yeah.
better to know than not know.
Right, and then that big open space up right at the top of the screen, keep going up past the green.
Oh, I can't, that's as far as.
No, just your cursor.
Oh, up here?
Yeah, up, keep going. That open space right there, that's gonna be 26 homes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one we're processing.
Yeah. Okay, wow, so all of that traffic from Hutter is gonna go on to 95 at that point, from the bypass?
Well, arguably, it's already going
Yes,
there
no,
now. It's just going slower, more slowly.
right. Yeah,
Subdivisions are going in northern part of the county faster than we can count them, almost, it seems.
yeah.
Would it be, I'm wondering, just thinking out loud here, if it would be prudent for maybe the planning commission to recommend,
That's what I'm thinking.
as part of the comp plan update, recommend that
Yes, it would.
be added to the future land use map.
Yes.
Since we don't actually have a separate future acquisitions map because we don't do highways, but
Yeah, I'll bring it up.
I think that needed to be done in the 2010 comp plan, but it wasn't.
Oh, yeah, you're right, that's a good call. And just so you know, embedded in the existing code is what I pulled up on the screen, so we have precedent for this sort of thing. So, if you're okay with it, I'll talk to Plan Commission.
Yeah.
We'll roll it in the comp plan update.
Yeah.
I'll get
Second-
back to Glenn Miles.
Right, second question,
Uh-huh.
do you know if the cities of Coeur d'Alene and/or Hayden are on board with this? or
Yes,
considering it?
I do know. In fact, that's why we're doing it, is they're already ahead of us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, especially Coeur d'Alene, because they allow the landings at Waterford to go all the way to Hyde Road, which I think was a good step.
What's interesting, if you go back to the previous slide with the second ordinance,
This one?
yeah, the setback. Yeah, 205.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is, and you're citing the ordinance, isn't that a highway district or an ITD? Doesn't that fall within their jurisdiction?
What?
The setback?
Setting setbacks.
Setbacks fall
It's
within
ours.
the county or city's jurisdiction, which is why a long time ago, the county coordinated with Post Falls and Rathdrum on the Highway 41 overlay.
Okay.
And like I said, now it's paying off, now that it's finally, slated to get widened as well.
Right.
Are we looking at a high number of properties that this is gonna affect?
Not so much for us because, this is the growth corridor for Post Falls and Kootenai.
Well, sorry, David, I didn't mean to trample on your words, but, most of this is zoned, that's in the county is zoned agricultural. The only ones that are zoned rural, there's a couple developments, Record Estates, south of Pole Line, Big Sky Estates, north of Pole Line, and then up Diamond Bar Estates north of Hayden, that are already developed and zoned rural.
Okay, so there, so the.
In actual fact, I don't know that we'll have all that much effect.
Okay.
Right. And the property around I-90 that's zoned ag suburban is all, it's basically the Armstrong farm
Right,
still, so.
okay.
But it's the sort of thing, now that I know you're comfortable with it, we can drill down on the details.
Right.
Through
Sure.
our GIS system, get those kinds of details. for
So
you.
is this something that we notify by mail, the property owners that are directly affected?
Most certainly. I
Okay.
think the first thing would be to develop a strategy of
Okay.
exactly how many county properties are there, who all's going to be affected. Once we know that, then we pull the trigger on some sort of process of notifying everyone, saying we have an interest in doing this. What do you think? Have the dialogue, and then ultimately we have to have a public hearing from the Plan Commission and the County Commissioner.
Where does the 150-foot distance come from?
On
From the center line?
preserving that right away.
That'd be,
But
road.
do you
that'd be
mean,
300 feet total. And
300 feet.
by comparison, like the existing US 95 through Coeur d'Alene and Hayden's 220 feet. So,
200 to 400 feet is pretty common standard for highways.
and that,
You know.
and Highway 95 is that grade, and I think the current plan for the Hutter bypass is, I don't know that this is actually really feasible, but it's supposed to be below grade.
It is. That's the plan.
But the funny thing is, the North Spokane corridor, the original rod had it being built below grade too, and they actually had to go amend their EIS and get an amended rod to build it mostly at the grade,
Wow.
to save cost.
Oh,
Actually get the damn thing done after like 50,
Okay.
60 years.
we may be in the same boat, but the
I'm
current
thinking
thinking is below
so,
grade.
but.
Actually, for
But
land
that would,
compatibility reasons.
well, yeah.
To keep the sound down. and
Right,
that sort of
you don't
thing.
have to build sound walls like you do.
Right.
But, that would, probably likely cause the, setback area to be wider as well, because of the nature of, how it's built. And then it'd have to be wider.
So,
in the
like
vicinity.
everything else in planning, we'll be flexible as we go along.
yes.
All right, that's it, unless you have anything else.
No, I'm fine.
Thanks for your time.
That it?
Yep.
Public comment? None? 9:46 a.m. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
All right, see you back here at 11.
Yep.